So tell you what, everybody, on this episode of the One Mic Stand, we're talking to Cylumena. Very excited about this. Before we get to that, let me introduce myself. I'm Jonathan Kirsting with the Pittsburgh Technology Council and Tech Vibe Radio. And I'm really pumped about today's episode because cybersecurity has always been a huge topic. I mean, it's one of those things where it never goes away. It gets crazier and crazier, weirder and weirder, worse and worse. And the pandemic has just amplified that. But I don't worry. I sleep well at night because there are outfits like Cylumena that have some just awesome solutions and some really great people behind those solutions that just really put you at ease. And I always tell people, really don't take care of your cybersecurity yourself, especially if you have a business with people relying on you. It's just one of those things where you got to leave it to the pros. And I won't tell you how I know that. But anyhow, on today's show, we have no stranger to Tech Vibe, Wawrzeniak and Daniel Plakosh from Cylumena. Guys, it's so cool to be hanging out with you guys. Thanks for being here. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on. I guess it didn't go too terribly the first time that you're at least allowing me back.
You passed the test barely, and I was like, you know what? He's maybe cool enough to come back on, and he's here.
We tried to up the coolness with Dan.
I was excited when your folks reached out and said, "Hey, can we do this?" I'm like, "Absolutely," because like seriously, like you guys bring cybersecurity like down to where folks like me, can understand it and make it actionable and everything. And that's why I think it's important with cybersecurity is because we want it to be actionable and not have people be freaked out, but know that, yeah, it's scary out there, but with some good basic blocking and tackling, everything's going to be cool. That and a good Bitcoin account, nothing to worry about, right?
Exactly.
Just to set the stage.
Yeah, we'll talk about that offline, right?
Absolutely. So before we get into the conversation, I always think it's most appropriate for our viewers and our listeners to know a little bit about your backgrounds. And so, Luke, start with you. Who is Luke, and how long have you been at Cylumena for, and why are you so freaking interested in cybersecurity?
Yeah, sure. Appreciate it. So, like you said, I'm Luke Wawrzeniak. I've got a little over a decade in the various disciplines within cybersecurity. I'm a manager of risk and compliance at Cylumena. I've actually been with the organization since its inception. I was the first hire, actually. So
I was the first hire.
They started low and have gotten a lot better with people like Dan. So I didn't set the bar too high, fortunately, and we're continuing to get better and better.
Wow, that's great. And so, Dan, what's your background, man? It seems like you got some good skills going on here. What's up?
Yeah, I've been with Cylumena for probably about 2 years now, I think a little more than. And before that, I was doing cybersecurity work, working in identity and access management. And before that, I was doing some internal audit work, so reviewing the back ends of making sure everything's secured properly and things of that nature.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
now, helping out Luke with some projects and helping him be better.
We're going to get into those projects as well, too, because I really like being able to talk about some of the things, some of the clients you've been working with and how you've been able to help them. I think it really brings it as a concrete way to show how Cylumena kind of steps in. So Luke, just give us the quick elevator pitch about Cylumena. I think it's a cool company because it was a spinoff from SDLC Partners, which is one of my favorite tech companies here in Pittsburgh, because they saw the need out in the marketplace and wanted to attack it in a different way.
Yeah, they're one of my favorite too for a couple of reasons, obviously. But so I think last time we talked about a couple of our service offerings, and one of them was the managed service offering.
Right.
We are offering virtual CISO services to organizations that might be a little bit smaller or might not have that level of expertise from the C-level from an information security perspective. We're continuing to build that out. And then over the past couple months, and this is a bit where Dan and I fall, is we're really building out our more traditional consulting services.
Cool.
So in the disciplines of risk management, fitting with my title, right? Third-party risk management, business resiliency, which I think is something we're probably going to talk a little bit more about today, given the crazy times that we're all living in. So we've got a lot of new clients, which has been pretty exciting over the past couple months. And like you were alluding to at the beginning, there's been no shortage of work. So it's
unfortunately,
both upset and grateful for it at the same time. But yeah, crazy times.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, let's talk about, I think resiliency is the key word here. And that's really what cybersecurity kind of comes up to when it comes to everything that's going on right now because everyone's working remotely. I mean, it's like everyone's not focused the way they once were. And let's talk about that a little bit. You know, what is COVID now creating? Because I think there's lots of opportunities where people are now finding new ways to hack and be creative and way into businesses.
Yeah, it's funny that so a lot of organizations are finding new ways to your point, but I mean, I'll actually pull it back a little bit and just utilizing the hysteria of COVID. We're actually seeing a major trend in the amount of folks just increasing like the basic stuff like phishing and social engineering and stuff like that. I'm sure everyone watching at some point has gotten some sort of an email or a text message or something that says, hey, here's some toilet paper you can buy on Amazon right now since there's a shortage at your grocery store. Click this link. And it's just like, oh my gosh, no, please don't do that. And it's just folks taking advantage of the, paranoia and some of the hysteria out there right now, which is really concerning. And then folks, if you do click a link and you're on your home network, then you've potentially got other devices that could be compromised as well. So I mean, we always try to begin with just basic common sense, basic, like you said, blocking and tackling earlier, from those good common sense practices.
Absolutely. What have been some of the concerns that your clients have been coming to with you now, since a lot of this has hit and we're a few months into it?
So a lot of the concerns are, what do I do actually? So a lot of organizations are, they don't have remote capabilities, just as an example, because we focus mainly on the small and mid-sized businesses. Organizations like, PNC and BNY Mellon, some of the bigger organizations in Pittsburgh, they've got this stuff pretty buttoned up.
They have a whole apartment based on this, right?
Plural, right? So they've got stuff. We've got clients where, not every employee has a laptop. So Dan and I were working on some projects before COVID, doing a business impact analysis, just as an example, where we were helping our client go through and document every single one of their critical processes, document all the critical applications that support those processes, all the critical pieces of infrastructure, basically doing the fundamental and foundational work from a business resiliency perspective. And this is just something we haven't seen organizations really doing well, because there's always money to be spent in better places. Yeah.
It's a nice thing to have, but you're always like, nothing bad's really gonna happen.
And right, and it's
like that. And the next quarter, what happens? COVID freaking 19, right?
Right.
We're right in the middle of the project.
So that actually happened. Yeah, we were right in the middle of the project, getting ready to do a tabletop exercise, and it's like, hey, the organization's gonna be shutting down. We're like, okay, well, we've got like 6 weeks left. So fortunately, we are a cyber firm, and in coordination with SDLC, we were prepared from a business resiliency perspective on our side. Practicing what we preach, where we've got our remote capabilities and our processes well documented. And Dan's actually leading a project right now to revisit that internally.
Okay.
But yeah, it was interesting times to try to go through and help this particular organization document everything and make sure that all of their processes from a business resiliency perspective were documented as they had to be executed. So it was just another example of a lot of organizations, especially those that belong to the tech council, they're reinvesting a lot of their revenue to develop all these latest and greatest cool stuff, but folks a lot of times forget that you need to make sure that your company is secure so that you don't lose proprietary information, just as an example, for all that new cool stuff.
So Dan, what are some of the gaps that you often see when you do these analysis for companies?
So people often miss, fundamentally, you have to start off with identifying which processes you have that are critical, and that changes over time. So you have to make sure that you're revisiting that and identifying which processes you need to make sure you can still perform in order for your business to function. So people are missing that, and there seems to be a misunderstanding as to what it means for them to be critical. So going through all of those things and then identifying the dependencies of those systems. So what in that process can take it out? Is it a piece of software that if that software goes away, you have no way of performing it, or do you have manual workarounds that you can do it? If you have manual workarounds, how long can you do that? Because there are some things that pile up, even if you're doing it manually, that you kind of have to revisit later.
I've been doing manual workarounds for 23 years.
So your resiliency practices are great and can't be taken down.
But yeah, that's probably the biggest thing. And then making sure that you have procedures documented for both the regular process and the workaround in case something happens, because just because you have a workaround that you've identified a way to do manually doesn't mean everybody knows it. So there's going to be people that haven't had to do that because it's not normal business. So having that written down for others to read and be able to perform, it goes a long way.
Absolutely. And this is why I think it makes so much sense why you have to have a consultant do this for you. No one, I think, can really honestly go through this and do a list themselves internally. I feel like you need that outside party to really do something effective, and that's really top to bottom.
So it also helps to have somebody talk you through it. So a lot of times when somebody thinks about it, it's real quick. Like, I know that these are my critical processes, but if you sit down with another person and you start talking through them, usually a lot of other things come out that you weren't considering. And that's probably the bigger point with it too. Like, there's things that you're not thinking about that you really do rely on.
Right. And so many times it's because it's what you do every day. So it's just intuitive. And you're not even seeing it as like a step or even a process sometimes. And it's like I said, that outside set of eyes, like, no, that's actually mission freaking critical. And that's got to be backed up somehow, guys, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Sometimes it's an application that you've just completely slipped your mind because it's only critical for a small piece, but it's handing things off from one place to another.
Right. And that's when you guys call in the RPA team from SDLC, right?
You're darn right. It's actually a really important point that Dan brings up there is one of the bigger things that we've seen also is the interdependency and the cross functionality of organizations. So, I mean, a lot of organizations, they operate some processes in silos. So I just complete my piece and, where does it go from there? I don't know. I post it somewhere or the application takes it. Well, okay, how does that affect Jonathan or Dan after I get my work done? And is that a break point? Is that a potential, breakdown in the process? Is there a manual workaround if that application doesn't exist? All those things are things that we try to identify and create remediation strategies for.
Excellent. And then from there, you often then build a business continuity plan based on what you assess. You able to then bring back something that says these are the things you got to do. Here are the technologies you need to install, and so forth. And you help them kind of put that all together. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Sure. So what we were pretty much talking about was the business impact analysis, which is, from our perspective, that's the first and most important legwork and hard work within business resiliency.
Groundwork for everything that's going to get built.
It's exactly right. And we've created a life cycle that we use and share with our clients that basically says, okay, after you have the BIA completed, the next step is to create recovery strategies, and that's specific for your business processes, your facilities, your infrastructure, and your technology. After you create those recovery strategies, you then create business continuity plans. So that's going to be roles and responsibilities, communication strategies, training, plan reviews, tabletop exercises, and testing. So continuing on from there, you need to test all this stuff. So it's great to have something written down and socialized, but have you ever done something where you put a plan together but you don't test it and you're just like, oh darn, this in practice doesn't work at all. So in conducting tabletop exercises where you get different departments in a room and you actually walk through scenarios like a pandemic, unfortunately, or like natural disaster or something like that, that's when you actually put these into practice. And then Dan brought up a great point earlier, is that this stuff is evolutionary and continues to change and evolve and needs to be revisited on a periodic basis. So those are kind of the high level main steps for our business resiliency life cycle.
Yeah, I think it's important you bring up the fact that you got to go back and keep looking at this, because the technology changes so quickly, the threats change so quickly, that it's like it seems like every year seems like a good idea, but I'm sure sometimes, depending upon how business critical is, maybe it's like every 6 months. I don't know, but it's one of those things where it's not like you're solved for the next decade. And you
that's exactly
it's one of those things that, depending on the business, you should revisit it on some sort of periodic frequency. You also need to revisit anytime you have a change in your environment as well. Okay. So if you bring in a new system that is going to take over part of a process, you need to assess how that's going to affect everything downstream.
Most definitely. So what do you guys, what are your thoughts on, it seems like in this day and age, everything with resiliency and cybersecurity, it's not just the systems and the technologies that go into place, but it's developing this culture around it that it's become a business fundamental. Like as much as it is to put a profit on your budget, it's like you have to have this whole mindset that you got to keep things locked down, you got to keep things secure, you got to keep things backed up. Is that something you help people with as well too on the cultural side of things?
Absolutely. So part of the life cycle, I think I kind of glossed over it, but is that training aspect. So we do offer cyber training for organizations, and there's varying degrees and varying levels. So if you have a small organization that's, say a construction company or something like that, that's growing, and they've, never really given consideration to something like third-party risk management. You've got a whole bunch of suppliers bringing a bunch of products into your construction sites, your offices. These folks have access to certain things, including your data sometimes, just depending on the service that they're providing. So yeah, I think it's a really good point, because organizations just, it hasn't been front of mind for them. I mean, obviously the bottom line is for first and foremost for a lot of these organizations, but that could very well be affected and even ruined, as the result of a cyber attack.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. That's why I always tell people, like, if you have any thoughts about this, just give you guys a call. Like, I feel like, and now is like a perfect time to be thinking about this. I mean, as much as things have sped up in the business world in order to keep yourself afloat and stay alive, this is also the opportunity to be like, no, we actually need to make sure we got a plan, because A, we're going back to work, B, this could happen again. And so there's no time like the present. And I'm always saying, like, talk to the folks at Cylumena. You're in Pittsburgh. Like, I really can't think of a better place that they're just going to hang out and talk to you, at least give you an initial assessment and think about what's going on, and set you in the right direction as far as it is, because you guys are so personable and easy to work with. So why not?
That's kind.
I'm serious. I just feel like so many businesses, like I see it every day with not just our membership, but just in the industry in general, where so much of this is just an afterthought, or it's like hey, I've got things locked down with my McCaffrey or whatever it is. It's like, as you do. And I just feel like, man, your business is your baby, and you got people depending on you. Make sure it's safe and make sure you got the best practices. And that's why I think Cylumena has been so successful to date. Anything that we haven't talked about that we need to get out to our viewers and listeners? Anything I've glossed over, or we need to put a little more focus on?
I appreciate, especially when you say, yeah, we would just love to have a conversation. And, we offer many more services than business resiliency. And if you've got any sort of a cyber concern, we'd be happy to talk with you, especially if you're in the Pittsburgh area. It's hopefully, as we continue to go to the green phase and then beyond, we can actually get back to meeting in person and grab coffee or something, and just
that's the purple phase.
Figure out a strategy. Is that what it is?
Okay.
Is there a purple phase?
Yes, there's a purple phase.
I've not seen it.
There's not. But if there is, I'll be part of the purple phase, and that's when we can have coffee together. All right.
Yep. Done.
I was told
copyright that too.
I was told after green, nothing went back to normal, and I was like, so I don't know what phase I'm waiting for then.
Yeah.
We don't know. It's going to be okay, I swear. Guys, always great catching up with you. I love it. Very cool stuff. Cylumena, Luke, Dan, you guys are the best, man. Be cool.
Yeah, thank you.